The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, one and all. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're still coming to you after all these years from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And to find out about the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. X-Zone, my guest this hour is Steve Asher. And Steve, welcome to the X-Zone.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor.
Hey, Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in becoming a paranormal researcher.
Well, I don't know. Different people have different motivations and different start points. For me, honestly, it had to do with being a young kid that had encountered certain things that I couldn't explain.
Right.
And it went from being really scared as a child and doing a lot of precautions, the type of kid that would sleep with a nightlight on and stuff like that. And it got to the point where I started just going to the local library of all places. Like I said, I come from a small southern town, and so the library wasn't extensive in the things of metaphysics and the paranormal and whatnot, but they had the 133 section, which had to do with that. And once I kind of started studying up a little bit on what I thought ghosts were and this and that, it gave me a little bit of peace of mind where, what's the old saying? The only thing to fear is fear itself.
Exactly.
And knowledge is power. So initially I did it just to keep myself from being scared and being able to sleep at night. I mean, it's just that mundane. As I got a little bit older, my interest, grew from just ghosts and started getting more into everything from ESP to all the different stuff, Bigfoot and UFOs and various, parallel universe theories and whatnot. And that's just where I kind of have stayed and maintained an interest in that. I mean, obviously I have other interests, but that was sort of my personal thing that I've seen that I did pretty well and then I felt comfortable in and I maintained an interest in.
I understand you've just completed your second book and it's available out there. And what is the title of your book?
The second book, it's through Permuted Press, which is the same as the first book. This is the second part of what's going to be a trilogy, but I may do a four-part to end it. But the name of it is Hauntings of the Western Lunatic Asylum. That's the original name of the old hospital that was here, probably 30 miles from where I am in Princeton, Kentucky. Right. And it had just a long history and very – I don't want to say a checkered past, but obviously an old asylum, you go from that day's what was considered innovative techniques, lobotomies and whatnot. And, you get a lot of old ghost stories from workers and this and that, which is sort of why the original book, which was Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary, which I actually had worked at for going on 10 years and got stories of my own, not to mention some from other officers and supervisors.
The name of the second book is once more time?
Is Hauntings of the Western Lunatic Asylum. All right.
What kind of experiences did you have working there as a corrections officer?
Now, as of the second book, this is where I got these mainly from different people who had either worked at the hospital and worked also at the penitentiary. See, the way it works is this. in this area, a lot of times the guys or the inmates, whatever you want to call them, that we would house at the Kentucky State Penitentiary, when they would act out to a certain degree or show a disconnect with reality and various forms of self-abuse and mutilation and whatnot, we would farm those guys out to them to do like a 72-hour or however long psych eval and whatnot. Right. And we kind of was like a revolving door. They always would kind of come back and they'd send them back to us and we'd send them back to them. There was always sort of this symbiotic thing between the two facilities.
All right. So what kind of, let's just go back a few steps. What kind of paranormal experiences have you personally had?
Well, the one that really sort of set me off onto all this. And understand since probably 2005, 2006 officially, I had an actual group that would go out and do investigations and whatnot. Yeah. And it was more based on helping people as opposed to, we're going to catch a ghost or any of that. But what you would call my maiden voyage off into this, I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. I wasn't very old. It was summertime, and I had a friend sleeping over. And so anyway, we were in our little room, and so we were getting ready to go to bed. We were still awake. We were just, turning the televisions off, getting ready to go to sleep. And my friend kind of acted a little odd, and he's like, "Do you feel that?" And I was like, did feel sort of somewhat of a change in the air, almost a pressure change. I didn't think a whole lot about it, but looking around, I had an open doorway, and where I lived was in a rural area, so when lights go out, there's not a lot of street lights and all that, so it gets dark. Yeah. So I saw something in the doorway, and obviously the doorway was open and it was black, but whatever was there was blacker than black, if that makes sense. It was just cast no reflection at all, and it was, I guess if the doorway was, say, 7 foot or so, it was all but 7 foot tall, and it was almost as wide as a doorway. And it's not what I would classify as a shadow figure or hat man or anything like that. It was almost like a cloaked figure, and it didn't say a word. It didn't have like glowing red eyes or any of that stuff, but it obviously scared me and my friend. And so he's like trying to figure out how to get out of the room. Both the window and also the doors both on the other side of the room. So of course I'm trying to calm him down, say it's going to be okay, and I'm scared too, but I don't know what am I? I'm sitting there kind of trying to comfort this kid, and I'm sitting there going, holy crap, what's going on? Yeah. So as this went on, it wasn't that long, but it felt like forever. A few 5-10 seconds passed, and you could feel like a draw, almost like a draft pulling air past this thing. And I'm not talking Hollywood papers flying in the air like that, but it was enough that I noticed it. And being a young kid raised in the South and in the Bible Belt, the only thing I could think to do is I'm going to have to get some lights on in this room. Again, it was an older home that had like the pool light, with the little string. Yeah. So that's about 1.5 feet past my edge of my bed, and the doorway is maybe 4 or 5 foot past the edge of my bed. Well, as I jump up, and I can't explain why I did this. I don't explain it. I was never a brave child, but it struck me to go, this is what I would have to do. So I stand up, I go to reach for it. As I'm going to reach for it, of all things, I start singing "Jesus Loves Me, This I Know." I'm not sure why I decided to sing that song, but for whatever reason, that was what I had in my armory and my repertoire. That's what I had. So as I was saying that, I pulled the light switch. I fell back onto the bed, of course, covered my head up like every kid in the world. And I'm waiting there, and I'm going, Jesus, please stop. Please stop whatever this is. And I wasn't an extremely religious child, but I was at that moment. So anyway, the pressure changed, and so I built up the bravery or whatever to peek out from under the covers, and obviously it was gone. I talked to my friend about it, asked him what he saw. I didn't tell him what I saw. He basically recited the same thing that I saw and confirmed that. In fact, my friend never spent the night again, which who can blame him? Heck, I didn't want to sleep there after that. But obviously for a few nights after that, I'd be, putting little Bibles around the room and stuff like that. And I'm not a person that sees ghosts and things, and I don't see Jim Morrison in my Raisin Bran in the morning or something. I'm not that guy. And it never happened again like that. It was a one hit deal, which thank goodness for that.
Yeah,
but,
I guess so.
That's really what set me off. Obviously, I'd seen things since then investigating, also seeing things in the penitentiaries that I was at. But that was really the one that was the kicker. That was the one that started it all.
My goodness. Yeah, I've never seen Jim Morrison in my serial either. And I'll tell you something. If I had your experience, I would have had more than just a few Bibles. I would have had candles, and I would have gone to churches, and I would have borrowed some statues, barbed wire, the entire thing. So, wow. My goodness. You and I have to take our first break. Please stand by, Steve. Great having you with us. Exonation, our guest this hour is Steve Asher. His website is www.steveasher.com. That's www.steveasher.com. And listen, Exonation, whether you're a skeptic or a believer, send me an email. Tell me who you'd like to have on the show. It's always great getting your emails. Some of them are a little spicy, and I didn't know certain of you knew how to spell so many four-lettered words. But I know they come from the heart, so I've got thick skin doing this show for 28 years. You kind of get used to a lot of things. Dead chickens, dead goldfish, you name it, they come. FedEx comes with a package. They don't worry about bombs. They worry about dead animals, and rightfully so. Steve Asher and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget the X Chronicles newspaper is available online at www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. And for all the programming we have available on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. And welcome back, everyone. Steve Asher is our special guest this hour. His website is www.steveasher.com. Steve, tell us a little bit about your paranormal investigating group that you have.
Well, the name of it is the Caldwell County Paranormals. That's the county that obviously that I live in.
Yeah.
Some people say, well, why did you call it Paranormals? That's not really a proper word. What I wanted to do was, obviously, my interest is in the paranormals, or in the paranormal. And I kind of chafe at the whole ghost, thing, and that's fine. I mean, that's entertainment, I guess, and all that. And there's a certain element of that. You have to do something because it interests you and it has some excitement into it. But
right.
If whatever these certain entities or forces or whatnot are, if they were human at one time, obviously, I would assume they would keep some sentience to them and wouldn't want to be gawked at and made fun of. And it's one of those things where there's some shows that I won't get into, but it has that kind of come at me bro thing. And
they're disrespectful.
It is very disrespectful.
Yes.
And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a Southerner, but there's a thing, if there's a certain etiquette, there's a certain kindness you want to extend to somebody, especially if the conventional wisdom is these are people who have become lost and turned around and are confused. Why make it worse? I mean, when I drive in larger cities, I get turned around, and I would hate to be treated that same way. And it's about, usually for us, a lot of times there's people that have children that don't know what they're seeing or whatever, again, power or entity or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
They're scared by it, and they either want to try to help it move along or whatever. Most people just want their kids to be able to sleep at night. They don't want everybody have to be sleeping in the living room, like you've seen like in some movies.
Yeah.
But and that's the thing I do want to say. I'm not here to sell anybody on the paranormal. I don't even say that whatever these people are seeing are ghosts, because there's no quantifiable proof that there are ghosts or there aren't ghosts. I tend to think toward that there would be an afterlife, just in some of the things kind of I've encountered in EVPs and electronic voice phenomena, things that I've caught that seem to be responding to questions. But like I said, you can't really be a researcher. You're either a true believer or a full skeptic. Which if you're completely full skeptic to a naysayer, you're not really being open enough to any sort of information or stimuli that may counter what you believe.
Right.
I try to sort of stay in the old dragnet, just the facts. Here's what was seen. This is what was felt. This is what they reported. This is the temperature changes we've got and whatnot, and let the reader decide that. The way I wrote the books were, they are fictional stories, but based on true events, different people's experiences, some of my own experiences, and take them as what they are. Take them as some good ghost stories. Being my mother's family is from the Appalachian areas of Kentucky, which is very hilly and clannish, and they had a very strong oral tradition of stories. Yes. And I think I got that from my mom and her side of the family, because obviously you can't shut me up. But it's just one of those things that I love a good story, and especially if it's got truth in it.
Yeah.
And that really draws people, and because they'll ask me, and it's like, how do you sleep, knowing that this is out there? And I'm like, well, I mean, it was there before I realized it. It's just, if anything wanted to hurt me, seriously harm me or do anything like that, it probably would have by now. And I take precautions. And but it's just one of those things. It's just a great interest to me. And it seems like people have really responded positively about it.
I think it has a lot to do with your attitude. I love it.
I appreciate it.
I love the attitude and the honesty and the sincerity that comes across as well. Tell me.
I started to say I'm real bad about taking compliments. I appreciate that, but I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be that way. Everyone should be that way.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
World, you know?
See, I agree with you, and that's what part of the compliment was made for, because many people that I have spoken to over the years who claim to be paranormal investigators or ghost hunters or whatever do not have the same values and virtues that you have. So my hat is off to you for having that kind. What would you say was the most?
I was just going to say, thank Mom and Dad.
Yeah,
they're the ones that stayed on me about it.
Hey, I agree with you. I agree. So thank you to Steve's mom and dad for that. Tell me about the most compelling case to date that you and your group have worked on.
Wow. Let me think. There was a couple ones that were pretty hairy. Mm-hmm. We had been checking out and getting some reports about a female or an entity that appeared to be female in an outer lying part of Princeton. I don't want to give a location, obviously.
I appreciate that.
And, well, researching it and getting more information on it and getting some responses and some EVPs and temperature changes and EMF meter things and going off, which, I'm a very simple tool guy. You can really rack up a lot of money for a lot of gadgets and bright lights. I go a lot on gut instinct. Mm-hmm. That served me well in law enforcement. It serves me well now. I try to go about it with using a scientific method. I study, with criminal justice, and I try to go with that. But we were checking this and that out, and come to find out that there was a young woman back in the mid-50s, early 60s who, well, she was pregnant, and this is during a time, especially in the South, that's not particularly a good thing for an unwed teenage girl. Thank God times have changed, but she ended up having to go to what they would call a backroom abortionist. Mm-hmm. And I won't get too gory, but obviously it went wrong, and the woman bled out.
Oh God!
And her sister was trying to get her out of there, and the guy was obviously like, "Look, if someone knows I did this, I'll rot in prison forever." And there was a shotgun around, and they were trying to fight over the shotgun, and apparently it cut the young woman who was bleeding out in half, to where she ended up being put on a couple railroad ties and dropped down into a well that was right in the area. And when you get things where it sounds like someone's garbled and gasping for air, and you get all kinds of different weird things like that, that really struck me because that's a local story that happened. I could go probably within a county and find mm-hmm. some of the family related to that. I've never released anything about that story because, again, for respect for
privacy,
the person,
sure.
Respect for their family. And there's a lot of that. We had been in some places where there had been a house fire. There had been a pretty bad fire, and there was supposedly an entity accosting the children, causing mm-hmm. scratches and things like that, where we had to go in there and try to talk this thing out and try to figure out what it is. We were using I don't know if you're familiar with divining rods.
Yes,
and I know
am.
That probably sounds like me coming in there with an abacus, but
no, aren't they all? Isn't that part of dowsing?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it all comes from that.
Yeah.
And the thing was, like you said, again, the modern concept is, well, first of all, you have to have black matching shirts and caps, and you have to have X amount of gear, and you got to have 14 cameras, and you have to have it live streaming. That's the mindset. And don't mean to sound like an old bitter guy, but I'm like, come on. But we went in there, like I said, with our basic equipment. And the good thing about rods is that even if you encounter something, it has no batteries to drain.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Right. So anyway, while we were doing this, we kept getting just odd sounds, rattling, tapping, beating against the walls, like somebody's popping it with their hand, smacking it. And my wife, who ghost hunts with me, Cheyenne, she was telling this thing, like, look, these are children here, because it felt male. It just felt very aggro, and it felt male. And she said, look, I don't know what kind of man you are, but you're not being a man treating these children like this. And one of our other team members were holding the rods, and they would cross in for yes, cross out for no. Well, it kept kind of seesawing back and forth. And then once it said that, it crossed completely up to where it hit the person that was using it on their shoulders. And the rod actually caught my wife in the throat. It actually left about a 2 or 3 inch scratch, enough that it drew blood. So there was times like that. I mean, there's times when there was another time when we actually had a box fan, like, you know, you'd see in the floor, lift up and fly past us and hit the wall and shatter. You know, it was one of those things. That doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
And I would love to see a show that people went there, they did their stuff, and sometimes they didn't catch anything. Sometimes they didn't get any reaction at all, because that's the truth of it. The reality of investigating is there's a lot of research. There's a lot of listening to audio. There's a lot of going to the courthouse trying to find out who lived here and where, and you know, if there's any, you know, water, you know, running water in the home that can cause us that, or how far is it from some sort of train tracks and whatnot. And so there's a lot of that. It's not as sexy, I guess, as they try to make it on television.
Well, let's take a break here, because I do have to take my news break at the bottom of the hour. Steve, great having you with us, X-Zone Nation. Steve Asher is our special guest this hour. SteveAsher.com. And we'll come back to talk more about the paranormal, things that go bump in the night, and who knows what else. Steve Asher is my guest. We'll be back. Don't go away.
Broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond. You're watching the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Demo.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God.
It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
And welcome back, everyone. Steve Asher is my guest. He is an author. He is a paranormal researcher. And he is also a criminologist. I'm sorry, you're Department of Corrections officer, right? DOC?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So go on. Continue with what you were telling us about before we had to go for this ominous break.
Well, like we were talking about in regards of just shows and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's just sort of a weird thing that my research and whatnot and all that was for pure personal satisfaction, pure personal curiosity. Mm-hmm. Just like the thing about writing the books was a complete happenstance. Knew an author, and we were talking about this and that. And the thing I need to say right off jump is that I'm a fan of this type of stuff. You know, I got introduced to this in the States through guys like, Art Bell and whatnot. Sure. And so I was a fan of this genre and stuff like that. So sometimes I would hear different people on and go, hey, that was a really interesting take that you had on, say, Hollow Earth theory, or that's a really interesting take that you had on, abductions and abduction scenarios and whatnot. And so it was just a thing where I was talking to a friend, mm-hmm. and they said, so you worked in the penitentiary system? And I was like, right. And so they were talking about, well, was it like a regular prison or like a supermax? I said, what's a supermax? And so we touched on some of the stuff that we saw and some of the paranormal stuff we saw. And my friend said, do you ever write this down, or is it just in your head? I said, well, I mean, I've got some of it wrote down, a fair amount of it's in my head. But he says, well, can I see, a sample of this? I'm like, well, I'm not a writer. But sure, so long story short, he looked at it and he said, hey, can I show this to my editor? Which I thought, well, he must need a laugh today because I'm not a writer. He said, no, just humor me. Can I just show it to my editor? I'm just curious what he thinks about it. Mm-hmm. Well, about a week or so goes by. I'm doing my thing because, as I spoke to you before, I work with special needs adults during the day. Right. And that's kind of what my other persona is. I do that in advocacy for special needs children and all that. But he comes back and goes, do you have any more of these? I was like, yeah, a buku load, and he's like, could you think you could get 65,000 words? I said, I don't, and I'm still like deer in the headlights. What are you talking about? He says, oh, he wants to release your book. I'm like, whoa. I'm not a writer. He says, well, not yet. I mean, it was one of those things where it was very much kind of pulled into that thing. And I thought it would never get released. I just thought it would get shot down, or the penitentiary would freak out too bad, because it's the thing about law enforcement, that blue line, you really have to be careful, and which I am anyway out of respect, but you don't want to sour your relationship with these people. So, and I was like, well, let me kind of ask around, and so I talked to a few people about it, and they thought it sounded interesting, and it's just ghost stories, go ahead, as long as I didn't put out any names, things like that. Security protocols, well, you use key X4 to open this gate, that kind of thing. And so I just waited for them to go, we're fooling, but then here it comes, and then first edits and back and forth, and then there's send me here, what kind of cover do you want? And I'm thinking it's just not going to fly. This is interesting, but it's not going to fly. And then it's actually out, and then I'm like, oh crud. And then I'm waiting for the backlash, or people going, this is horrible, but people seemed okay with it, because I think, like you said, I tried not to beat them over the head with any what do you say? Just a line in the sand of, this is what is reality. This is what it is, and I try to tie it in that way, So it was extremely strange to have, and like I said, I'm very new to it. I'm still getting used to those shoes. I'm sure it's similar thing like when you first started doing radio, then you started having people go like, hey, I know your voice, or like this, or doing autographs and things like that, which still seems so weird to me. I actually, before getting into corrections, played a lot of music, did a little radio here locally, so I was in the mind of a musician and an entertainer. So when it came time to do this, I'm thinking I have no skill set for it. But it's strange because to a point you have, entertainment is entertainment. And, even though I am trying to write things that are rooted in fact, and I did legitimately investigate, it's a thing where, people want to hear the odd little stories and the things like that. And I don't know if it's just a certain personalities seem to respond, or people respond better to, because, there's a lot of people that might do something like a talking head, or they may do something like, well, look how awesome I am. Look what I did. Look at, I'm telling this demon over here to do whatever, which first of all, if you get button to counter a demon, you probably won't last for a few seconds. Anything that would be considered a non-human eternal entity, I don't want any part of. I'm smart enough to know I'm not that smart. So yeah, it's just like I said again, it was just really weird to kind of be wearing that cap.
How do you, if someone was to contact you and say, Steve, I think I've got something going on in my home. My kids aren't sleeping. They're telling me about shadows they see, and it's keeping them up all night. And I'd like you and your crew to come down here and take a look. How would you proceed in this investigation?
Well, obviously, just like any situation, you kind of vet the person. You get a little bit of an idea, check their background out, and usually you can kind of tell the person. I mean, it's hard, sometimes it's hard on the phone. If you're speaking to somebody face to face, you can generally read body language and their intent. If it's somewhere pretty close, it's not a problem at all. Which we don't charge for anything like that. I don't. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, I charge for books. That's
of course
different.
You're an author.
Well, I mean, it's one of these things, I still feel weird about charging people for books, but I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to. But it's just a thing where when it comes to something like that, we don't charge for anything like that. And, short of like, they were like, hey, we're in Atlanta, but this was like 6 hours from us, I was like, well, look, if you could maybe help with gas, or maybe, throw us some food while we're there or something, while we could try to do something like that. But, yeah, I mean, we're happy to help anybody out we can. I mean, obviously you try to do as much, between the distances that you can. And, a lot of times if it's something that people feel are negative, and this is coming from a guy, I'm still not particularly religious, but it's a thing of going, look, what is your line of faith? Do you have a line of faith? Maybe speak to a religious leader, or maybe pray on it, or maybe whatever. If you use smudging sticks as part of your stuff, cleanse your home that way. There's a lot of steps, 3, 4, and 5 before jumping all the way to 6 and loading up and flying in or something. That's just not something in my economic wheelhouse to do, which I would love to fly and buzz all over different places and investigate stuff. It's just, I'm a dad, we've got 6 kids, and it's one of those things, dad's got to keep bringing the bacon.
I know that feeling well. So what's the furthest that you've traveled away from your home to do an investigation?
Well, when we were in Thailand, we were actually there handling my oldest son's adoption. I don't know if you remember when they had that big uprising. They had their prime minister was ousted and another person took over. It was basically a coup. And we were supposed to be down there for 2 weeks. This was right after monsoon season, so they're still recovering from just a lot of death. And it was a real volatile time. It seems like a lot of times a natural disaster will really amp up people's emotions, obviously. Well, while we were there, instead of it being a 2-week thing, we ended up being down there for over a month.
Oh, my gosh.
And, yeah, it was pretty gnarly seeing guys riding up down the streets in the big, like you would select in the back of big hay trucks or corn trucks with, masks and guns and loudspeakers, and because I didn't know the language. So, but while we were there, we had interpreters that were very kind to us. And as you know or may not know, that a lot of Asian countries have a lot of ancestral worship and have like ghosts for hungry ghosts. If you drop food on the floor, don't touch it. That's for the hungry ghost. There's people, when you're cutting bananas down off from a tree, you tell the banana ghost, thank you for this and that. It's strange, but it's very polite. If that makes any sense. It's to the point of you thank everything, which is kind of a good way to go about it. You take fish in the water, you thank the water ghost. You take, this and that. You're thankful for every step of your day. And by doing that, sometimes they would have kind of like night hag situations, angry ghosts, people that were disenfranchised. And we were able to like check out some places that were supposedly haunted and stuff. And that was really great. So that would probably be the furthest that we ever did anything paranormal, like in regards of, on the other side of the planet.
So based on your experience and your knowledge and your training as a law enforcement officer, what do you think a ghost is?
Wow. What is a ghost? Honestly, I mean, I will give you, and this is just my
opinion,
speculative, and if you want to say learned, I hate to say that. I hate when people say, well, this guy is a paranormal
All right,
expert.
why don't we do this? Why don't we do this?
You know what I'm saying?
Sure, why don't we do this? Well, I'm going to take my final break, and that'll give you a couple of seconds to come up with a good answer, because I don't want, maybe I put you on the spot and I didn't mean to. So this is my way of trying to redeem myself with you, my friend. Give you a couple of seconds, and we'll both be back on the other side of this break with Steve Asher. His website is www.steveasher.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and I'm here Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, X Zone Broadcast Network, and on AM 1600 in St. Helens, Oregon. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howell will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multi-family dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Exonation, Steve Asher is our special guest this hour, www.steveasher.com. And Steve, thanks very much for joining us. It's a great pleasure talking to you. I wish you continued success in your career as a new author. And to you and your group who goes out there dedicating themselves to trying to understand what this anomaly, this phenomena is all about, continued success. But let's get back to my question. Based on your experience, based on the investigations that you've done with your group and your experience as a law enforcement officer, what do you, Steve Asher, believe ghosts are?
This is what I feel. And again, this is only my feelings and, like you said, my experiences. Everything has certain levels of bioelectric energy. It's said even running water produces a certain amount of current. I know a lot of Native Americans believe that, rocks, this and that, trees, the air, everything has a spirit.
Yeah.
It sort of borders on that, but it's the energy. It's the energy that drives us all. It's the energy that connects us all on the subatomic level. And I know I'm starting to sound a little ancient aliens, and I apologize.
Don't apologize.
Well, I'm just saying, I think that the energy that we all have, especially your passions, and sometimes in death, sometimes it's not pretty. And that's why it seems like a lot of times that there are connections to places that have had seen brutality and deprivation and various sort of exploitation and abuse. I believe that strength, that energy, which would equate to some sort of electrical impulse, remains. I think that's why a lot of times people, you've always heard that, it was a dark and stormy night, which of course sets the mood, but, the electrical energy in the air, that's all tied into it. I really feel that it all comes down to that basic energy that connects us all. I don't want to call it the force, but you know what I'm saying? There's a connection that everybody has, and everybody has the earth, even though, a lot of people have kind of disconnected from it, but it's still there. And to me, if it, whatever ghosts are, whatever that energy is, whatever that consciousness is, transmuted in some sort of bioelectrical force. And that, now again, that's just my personal theory. Because like I said, you feel energy, you feel the intent of sometimes of people. You can come into a room that's just had like a very large argument or a heated thing, or you can go into a place that you don't know anything about and the room feels incredibly oppressive, and you learn that that particular room is where someone was left in there and starved to death or something like that. We know much more than we want to accept. I think just like a police officer can vet an area or a person very quickly, a hunter can look down a path that 7 other people walked past and said, no, this over here is the game trail. Can't you see how this is with the limbs?
Right.
You work on that. You get an eye for it. And that's just something I've noticed. I always feel the situation before I ever get something. I may be in a situation and I'll feel something. I go, hey guys, please take some pictures over here. And usually when I do, there'll be some sort of anomaly, or there'll be some sort of weird EVP, or there would be some sort of pressure that, that I feel, and then that which coincide with different readings. And it may not be, it might kind of be pseudoscience, but I just go on my gut. And if I have stuff that backs up the stimuli I'm feeling, and especially if I can repeat that to me holds water.
How does it, have you ever, you get that gut feeling and you tell somebody to take a photograph there, and bang, there's something there because you felt it, that like you're talking about that connection, whether it be ESP, whether it be some other sort of phenomena that has yet to be discovered. But how do you explain EVPs where you can't hear the voice, and yet when you play the recording back, whether it's digital or analog, there's a voice there?
Well, think about it. Especially like in digital, there's, the way it would pick up, I think it still goes back to electromagnetic energy. Tapes pick up an electromagnetic, signature, what would transmute back to music once it comes off the tape. So, I mean, to me, it kind of goes back to that. It goes back to that basic electrical charge of the world of, everyone's got it.
But I guess my question is,
I was just going to say that, please don't think that I'm trying to say that I'm like, some, all-seeing guy or anything like that. It's something everyone has. And just if some people have taught themselves not to hear or see things, that's the only difference.
What do you think about these TV shows? Are they pro or con when it comes to the legitimacy of what you and other serious groups are trying to do?
Well, and like I said, obviously, we have fun and we joke and this and that. I mean, no one wants to go do anything and just be sour-faced about it. I have great fun doing this. There's sometimes you see stuff that breaks your heart, especially when it's got to do with children that's past. I've seen some very good ones. There's a show called Kindred Spirits here in the U.S. I really like that. I think they go into it with the intent of helping the family, not just doing a photo op and using these people's miseries. I've seen a lot of them that do just that, do the opposite and go for the, the mother's crying, get tighten in on this shot.
Sure, the ratings.
That really bothers me. I can't watch those shows. I've watched a few shows like that. And like I said, again, some people really like that. And that's fine, but that's not me. I've talked to different people, they asked about, well, hey, why don't we do maybe something relating to your books or relating to what you do in, research, maybe like a pilot or whatever. And I'm like, guys, I can't BS it. I'm not going to BS it. I'm not going to fake, evidence. I'm not going to, so it kind of makes me not a viable tool. I don't play well with others on that just because, because I've heard producers tell people, you know what, nobody's going to know. And I'm like, I don't know. And they'll know. They would know. They could tell my body the way I'm carrying myself. I'm not a particularly good liar, which I guess is a bad thing nowadays. But
no, it's a good thing if you're in law enforcement.
Well, you know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
It's just a thing where, I have a really bad poker face. But yeah, I mean, it's a trend that I've noticed, but I think it's a thing where sometimes Hollywood or whatever goes, oh, well, this is what people want. And I think people just have to use their power of not watching this and not giving us the ratings. That's what it comes down to. I think sometimes people go for the
shock and awe.
The common denominator, the shock and awe quality of it. And don't get me wrong, there's some really dark stuff in these books that I've wrote.
Yeah.
You can't hardly write that kind of stuff and not touching some pretty dark stuff. I mean, the next books I'm writing about have the same sort of situation, if not worse. But you can be respectful in it. You don't have to make a mockery in a circus of somebody. And like I said, I'll get off my soapbox, but I try to make ourselves stand apart by doing that. Because I mean, there's a lot of places like, okay, in Kentucky, you have, most people think of Waverly Hills, which is a large sanitarium, which is the kind of the sister one off on the other side of the state. The Western Lunatic Asylum, which is now called the Western State Hospital, after World War I, when all the soldiers were coming back shell-shocked, and they said, "Look, we're not going to be calling this. They're not lunatics. These are servicemen." So they changed with the times, But I would much rather check that out as opposed to dealing with all the sensational hype of that. Which there's nothing wrong with that place. I know a lot of people visit it that love it, and if I could go in there and it was just, me and whoever and cameras and do a legitimate this and that without any, that you pretty much know they're not setting up, some sort of stimuli to go, oh, there's a ghost, or the door flew open. Not that I'm saying they're doing that, but it is a business. They want to draw people. If there's no activity, it kind of would seem like people wouldn't come.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's where it leaves me. I do a lot in Western Kentucky because that's what I know. Western Kentucky, Western Tennessee and Southern Illinois. That's my stomping ground. So that's what I focus on, because there's a lot of really spooky stuff in this area and interesting stuff that people just don't know, because most of this area and going off into Missouri and all that are kind of flyover states. People on the coast have no clue about it because that's not in
the
their
flight
mind is
plan.
at.
Listen, we've got about a minute left. Well, what are your final thoughts for the X Zone Nation tonight?
Well, I would like to say again, thank you for having me on, and thanks for all the folks listening. And like I said, as always, if they want to contact me, as you said, you're going to put some links up to my page, which is steveeasher.com. That's all lowercase and together. Just be kind to each other, and I know it might sound a little hippy dippy, but be kind to each other, and think before you act.
Hey, listen, the hippies had the right idea. Society was just stupid.
No, well, like I said, I was born in '69, so I was on the tail end of that. But it's just a thing of just be kind to each other and worry about each other, and the rest will work itself out.
Hey, Steve, I hate to do this, but our time is up, my friend. I'd love to have you back on in the future to discuss more of the topics that happen in Kentucky that you and I have been talking about tonight. Until then, take care of yourself, and my regards to your crew.
Thank you, sir, and God bless.
Hey, God bless, and you stay safe out there, will you? All right, X Zone Nation, Steve Asher has been our guest this hour, www.stevieasher.com, and I'll be back on the other side of the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com, or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.